Hello again, welcome to the second official lecture to the Making Deep Games course. Today we will dive right into the topic of how to become a mind reader. You never thought you would go to university for this, did you? So, you will look exactly like that. Not really. So if you want to create deep stuff, deep games, you have to know the deep stuff within you and your mind. So I am challenging you to become a mind reader, at least of your own mind. No promises about that of others. That also might be dangerous to try to read their minds. Becoming aware of your own experiences may not always be so easy. This is an old picture of our son Max. He hates hats, and you can very clearly see that. But not everything is so much on the surface as Max's disdain for hats. Game design is experience design. So every game creates an experience when played. However, the big question is, does it evoke the experience you intended? To evoke the experience you intend, you might want to understand it first, because you cannot model an experience you don't understand. You might end up modeling something else, and who knows what people will get out of that, because players can be incredibly creative in making sense of whatever experience they engage with. But one of the hallmarks of a skilled game designer is to be able to minimize that gap between intent and outcome. Jesse Shell, in his really recommendable book, The Art of Game Design, talks about the trickiness of experiences, the elusiveness of experiences, how hard it can be to analyze something and really clearly explain what constitutes this experience. He actually brings the example of pizza. Somebody said, well, this is a really bad pizza. And then he asked, well, how is it bad? Can you explain that to me? And that person says, I don't know, it's just bad. But there are so many ways in which a pizza can be bad. The dough can be too soggy, or it can be too crisp, it can be too thick, the cheese cannot be quite molten, or it can be overheated, the tomato sauce could be just ketchup. Had one of those pizzas, and it was in Italy, of all places. Really disgusting. So there are so many things that can go wrong with a pizza. Being able to pinpoint all the ways in which the pizza is wrong or bad is an important and critical skill for a game designer. Jesse says, but as tricky as experiences can be, creating them is all a game designer really cares about. We cannot shy away from them, retreating into the concreteness of our material game. We must use every means we can muster to comprehend, understand, and master the nature of human experience. Now, what does he mean by retreating into the concreteness of the material game? What I've seen over and over again is that urge to ask immediately, well, what are the rules? What are the mechanics? How does this game play? What do you do? What are the objects? Are there enemies? Because that's concrete. We can understand that. That's the tangible part of the game. When we are there, we're almost in safe waters, because then it's about tweaking the experience and making sure everything runs smoothly. But it's way ahead of the game already. That's way ahead of us making sense of what we really want to create. If you're not going for some cookie cutter experience, some well-established gameplay, but really want to model an aspect of the human condition, we have to start with, what is this experience even like? What characterizes it? What are the different variables that are at play? How does it work? So don't try to put something into rules and mechanics right away. These questions are way premature. Take your time to just poke the experience itself. What makes Christmas morning magical? And for some of you it might be really bad, then I apologize. Is there some other reoccurring event that for you is really magical? Maybe it's your birthday, or maybe it's a loved one's birthday, or maybe it is, I don't know, the beginning of summer or whatever floats your boat. But what is it about that time, that special atmosphere, that feeling of it, that makes it stand out for you, that wants you to get lost in that moment? And a lot of it will just be sensations. But can you tease it apart? Does time stop in some way? Do you feel relieved of pressure? Do you give yourself permission to enter the magic circle of this holiday or the special time in the year? Is it associated with connection and relationships, or is it associated with complete and utter solitude? Your way of communing with yourself and nature, or your way of hanging out with friends? What is it that really, when you break it down into its components, constitutes this experience? All of the things that make it what it is. And very often it's just, we have this general idea of it, it's just a feeling, but it's really, really hard to pinpoint it. So how can we possibly start reproducing that for players? And there is no guarantee that players are going to feel what you feel in that moment anyways. But still, it's a start. You create the possibility space, and then they're free to do with it what they want. You're just reining in the randomness of what you're doing by breaking the experience down into the components and trying to deliver something that approximates it. It can be really anxiety inducing to take that time. So I mentioned it before in an earlier video. Elude, the game about depression, is such a simple game. It doesn't seem to be much to it. But honestly, it took 6 months to design it, and it went from super incredibly complex, trying to grasp every single aspect of depression and friends and relatives, and how you try to find little goals to motivate you, and some that motivate you more than others, and then the setbacks and all of that. It was this huge beast of a complex, intricate system, to the most basic up and down of moods, and the struggle against your own mood that tries to keep you down against all of your efforts. So the implementation was pretty fast and straightforward. It was 9 weeks to build it. But working through the complexity to the simplicity took so long. And it's usually when you start really complex, that's not bad. As long as you manage to rein it back in. If you start really super simple, the question is it rich enough? So in my experience, and I don't know, it might be different for you, it might be different, it's different for every project anyways. But in my experience, I always try for something small, then it gets hugely out of hand, and then I cut, then I scrap everything. But having gone through all of the complexity was important to get all of the bad ideas out of the system and understand this whole thing much better in its complexity, to then zoom in on the one thing that really is important to me and that I really want to get across. And that part tends to be quite contained and quite simple and quite manageable. So it will be very interesting to see how you approach this. Also completely aware that you have 2-week sprints to make your prototypes or your game sketches. So you might have something that's a complex mess. That's because you didn't have enough time to scale it down. Or you have something that's rather simple, but it really doesn't have a lot of complexity. It really doesn't have a lot of depth. Or you might strike the perfect balance. You have something that's simple and sweet and deep and interesting and evocative. And I've seen that happen a lot in student projects, so it is very well doable. I'm just saying, don't be overly critical or concerned that you produce the perfect thing in 2 weeks. Give yourself time to explore. Don't panic that you have little time and you have to make something quick. I'd rather witness you thinking deeply about something and teasing out some core elements that could make it in the game and have a really promising rough diamond than something that works, but that's just another banal thing to interact with. Okay, so concrete tools. I promised you, here they are. I didn't invent them, at least not the first two. I read this amazing book by Julia Cameron. It's called The Artist's Way, and it's one of the most popular self-help books out there, and it's about creative recovery. It's modeled after the 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, but you don't have to be an addict to really like this book. So morning pages is one of her most important tools. And they are really quite miraculous, even though they are super simple. It is you writing 3 pages of longhand. I hope you can still do that. I know a lot of people can't. But it has to be longhand in some way, because the brain processes writing differently if you type on a computer than if you write by hand. And you're tapping into this creative well is much more immediate and direct if you do it longhand than typing on the computer. There have been research studies on that. So trust the process, try longhand. And you have to do it every morning right after waking. They're not evening pages, they're morning pages. And it's an important difference, because in the evening, even if that's your most contemplative time and when you have the most time to do them and when it's quietest and whatever, your brain is still in a different state than when you do it right after waking. And right after waking, one of the biggest advantages of writing morning pages then is that your inner critic is still asleep. The voice that pipes up and says, this is not even writing. What are you doing? This is just scribbling, and this is all dribble, and this doesn't make any sense, and you don't know how to spell, and you have nothing interesting to say. And what are you doing with your life? And these questions might come up, what you're doing with your life, but they come from a place where you can explore them without constantly self-doubting and self-criticizing and censoring. So it's good if you're not entirely awake. Don't do a whole lot of other things before you sit down to do your morning pages. It should be the very first thing you do. Maybe bathroom first, maybe coffee, but then morning pages. And they are a fantastic way of letting you dump all sorts of baggage. So anything goes. The pettier you can be, the better. Every tiny single thing that comes to your mind that needs to be acknowledged, just put it there. And don't dwell on it. So that's why it's limited to 3 pages. Don't write 10, and don't only write 1. Of the one, you're just getting started. It might be a little bit slow going. It's slow going when you start censoring yourself and you start to think. Let your hand take over and let just everything pour out that wants to pour out. You know when you hit upon a topic that's rich, that wants to be explored, when the writing starts to come more easily. And just stick with it. It might take you a few days or a week or maybe 2 weeks for it to really kick in for you, so that when you sit down and you do it, it's starting to become a habit, that things just flow and it becomes less forced. And you're not really supposed to reread them ever. So I've written, oh my God, so many journals full of morning pages, and I just toss them. I'm done, I toss them. I don't keep a single one, and I don't reread them. It's the same stuff all over. And some things get resolved and some things just keep reoccurring, but it helps me to see my own patterns, to see the themes that are there, but also to somehow track progress. So for myself, okay, I haven't felt about this in a long time. I haven't felt unfulfilled or lonely or whatever in a long time. So there are other things on my mind, or I keep coming back to, I need to move. That's a theme. I need a different country now. I need yet another city. So whatever it is for you, you will see themes emerging and reoccurring, and it just helps to get to know yourself better. And it will point you very gently, but very persistently towards any potential changes you might need to make in your life as well. And you can use this as fodder for game design and exploration through game design. And then creating experiences you can share with others who might be incredibly happy that somebody made this, so they can relate and they feel less alone about it. sometimes morning pages lead to game ideas, and very often they do not. And it's not their primary purpose anyways. It's just for you to establish better connection with what's going on in your mind, to get to know yourself better and to become more aware about the things that are bugging you, that need to be addressed, or that are also going really well. It can be also be a place for gratitude and appreciation. This is something I achieved, or this is something I find really awesome about my life. I'm incredibly happy about my family and feel really lucky that this is as it is. And then other things might be construction sites and ongoing, whatever. So don't stress if you don't happen to write one super creative idea after the other in there. It's not a game design journal. It's morning pages. Yeah, their main purpose is to pay attention to what's going on inside. So you tune into your own radio channel. And it's not just narcissistic navel gazing. It's not just something that's completely egocentric. The more you can pay attention to what's going on within you and really become aware, the more attuned you can also become to others. So I find that projecting our own feelings onto other people and assuming a whole lot about them gets less when we understand that our inner lives are more complex and complicated, and we pay more attention to them. So then we can also ask more insightful questions of others, or hold more space for whatever they want to share, or whatever they want to go through, or just let it be and think, well, everybody's on their own journey. So it's not just about you. This is not a selfish exercise. This tuning into the human experience can also be an opportunity for deeper connection with others, because we understand others go through stuff and have complex experiences as well. So reading your own mind is all good and well, but what if there is nothing to read? So you need some reading material. And that's where the second tool comes in, also by Julia Cameron. And by the way, both PDFs are in Student Portal and Week 1, so you can read up how she describes both the morning pages and the artist state. So the artist state complements the morning pages, and it's 2 hours that you set aside every week to nurture your creative consciousness. And 2 hours might sound like a lot, but it really is not, and it's a good investment. It's a necessary investment if you're a creative person, if you want to make stuff, if you want to make deep games, if you want to write, if you want to paint, if you want to cook well or be a loving presence in the life of others. All of these are creative things. To take these 2 hours for yourself to just play. It is a play date. It's not education. It's where you can be in your truest playful element. And I don't mean set 2 hours aside to play games, do something else for change. It's supposed to be fun for you, not something you think you should do. If it comes with this, but you really should go to a library, but you hate libraries and you don't like reading, then that's not a play date for you. Don't do it. The artist day is listening to what speaks to your truest, most authentic self. And you can start with what you loved to do when you were a kid, when you were 5 years old, when nobody has educated out of you what you intrinsically gravitated towards, because that's your true north. That never changes. In some way, shape, or form, your play personality remains the same. You might get more nuanced and complex and whatever, but what really speaks to you as a person, not in terms of the specific activity, but what this activity represents, that is something that's quite ingrained. So this is your chance to refill the well. And it can be long walks on the beach. It can be going to a flea market. It can be visiting a petting zoo. It can be going to thrift stores. It can be visiting the library or a music shop, or going to a concert, or just drawing for 2 hours, or whatever it is where you feel you can be in this playful zone. But the important part is do it alone. Nobody's allowed to tag along. Not your grandma, not your boyfriend, not your girlfriend, not your other significant others or whatever, not your cousin, your dog maybe. You have to do it alone, because the moment somebody else is there, half of your mind will be with them. You will not be able to fully focus on you having an experience. It's not about you feeling the well. You will worry, well, do they like it too? What do they think? Are they bored? Are they hungry? Do they need something? Am I listening to what they tell me? Even if you make a pact that nobody speaks a word, you will be attentive to body language and whatnot and start interpreting. It's just give yourself these 2 hours. It's a gift and you deserve it. So do it. Are the states point you towards the things that are meaningful for you at any given point? What this is precisely, that changes. But listen to where it draws you. Follow your body, follow your instincts. Maybe you need to take a trip to the mainland at some point as well, if you can do this safely again. And the morning pages help you figure out why something is meaningful to you, why engaging with this gives you a sense of play and joy. Both of these tools together promote creativity. It helps you to feel more strongly and clearly about things rather than, oh, I don't know what I should do with my kitchen wallpaper. You know exactly what color to paint your kitchen or what wallpaper you want. It will help you exactly to know what to wear each day. It will help you know exactly what you want to cook for lunch. This inner clarity of this is what I need when you need space, when you need to see people, when you need to do what kind of homework, when you want to do it. And if you really listen to this, you will want to do the right things at the right time, and nothing will fall through the cracks if you're generally having a bouquet of things in your life that you are sort of okay with. And if not, it also helps you figure out what you're not okay with and to make plans for how to change it. So it's really quite cool. It's the seed for more authentic and stronger creative work, for sure. And then this seed needs to be nourished. And this is the third tool that I would like to propose to you. I found it quite useful, and I call it Conversing with the Inner Game Designer, or IGD. And it's a conversation you have with yourself, but it's that part of yourself that's slightly smarter than yourself. And you ask about the goal of an experience, the conflict within it, win-lose conditions, and other structural things that are related to games. That's why it's conversing with the inner game designer and not conversing with your inner higher self or whatever. It's important that it's still somehow game design related. And again, it's important that even that conversation is not game design yet. It's still part of that pre-exploration phase that helps you understand what you're actually trying to model. What is the interesting thing here that wants to be expressed and communicated, and how are you going to go about that? So it's still part of that toolbox. But it uses structural game elements to systematize this inquiry of your personal themes. And that facilitates the transition to actual design. So asking about goal helps to establish a goal in game design terms. And asking about the conflict helps you to sketch out that possibility space within which your game operates. I'm not going to talk about this in much detail because I've written about it, and I think it might be easier, hopefully, for you to just engage with the text and then maybe play the game. So I put a case study for you on Studentportalen, a sample conversation with the inner game designer. So that document is called Conversation with the Inner Game Designer, and it's a part of the book chapter from Deep Games on these tools. And it walks you through the conversation that I had with my inner game designer when I was working on The Bridge. Now, granted, The Bridge is not the greatest game that's out there. Actually, it's quite terrible. But it was one of the really insightful moments for me as a game designer to understand the power of game design to become much more aware of what's going on within me. And working with the team that I had at the time and sharing these conversations and thoughts with them and manifesting this in a game also showed me how incredibly powerful this is when shared with others, when done collaboratively in a team, where everybody brings their own perspective, but they can relate through creating this experience together. So on many levels, this was a very interesting exercise to do. So it started with just an image of a tire swing. It sounds incredibly sad. And it was really not more than that. I just wanted a tire swing that you pushed, and then you hear laughter of a child, and it manifests. The child manifests in this ghostly form on the swing and becomes more and more solid. And there's more laughter as you keep pushing and pushing and pushing. But then if you stop pushing, it would fade again, and the laughter would stop, and it might turn into sobbing again. Sounds horribly depressing. And you could never, no matter how hard you pushed, you would never completely materialize the child. So the only way out was to stop pushing and move on. And I don't know where this came from. I mean, came from some other relationship stuff I was going through, but that was just the image that was there. And I wanted to work with it because it didn't leave me alone. So I had to do something with it, as it so happens with many creatives. Something is just suddenly stuck in their mind, and then they have to do something with it. But it wasn't very rich. So somehow I felt like I needed to turn this into some kind of a bigger experience and some kind of a game, because after all, I was working in the context of a game lab. And if I gathered a team around me, then they would expect me to make a game out of that. And maybe I should have just stuck with the image and see where that leads me, but then we made the bridge. And to turn it into a game, I started conversing with my inner game designer. And it asked, well, what is so hard about letting go? And is it really about love? And what kind of love are we dealing with? And what are the fears associated with letting go? And it turned into this really insightful conversation where I realized, well, there is not enough self-love really. And so I expect the other person to be there for me. And so if I ever want to get better at this, I will have to stop doing this, stop this possessive behavior, and just try to find within me what I need to be happy, and then have healthier relationships from then onwards. And my other teammates had similar experiences, so it was really cool to play this dialogue through the three of us. So in the Inner Game Designer document, you will see all of a very simplified version of that conversation. And here you can play the game if you want to. It's quite short, just to have a better idea of how it all works. And the reason I'm showing you this as an example, even though all of this is old and is not really that interesting as a game, is I want you to start doing this kind of conversing with yourself when you're exploring human experience related themes and unpacking them and digging into the experience of it and understanding them in their nuances and not glossing over things. So finding the theme, this is segueing into what I would like you to do for the first design exercise in this course. So every book, movie, comic, whatever, worth its salt, has a theme apart from its concrete plot. And it's that theme that stays with us long after we have forgotten the details of the plot. It's how it made us feel, in a way. It's what it was really about deep down, beyond the concrete words, beyond the concrete actions. That essence, that experiential essence, that is the engine of the whole experience. themes really have power, and they can communicate much more deeply than literal messaging. Hillman Curtis, media designer, wrote about theme very insightfully, and I gave you a PDF of that on Student Portal, and so I would really like you to read that. And I want you to then practice finding the theme in art and media as inspiration source for deep games. And then to use the Inner Game Designer tool to explore that theme and make it more tangible. So here is your first to-do before we meet for class. So I want you to check out 2 short movies and a children's book. And then you pick one and dive deeper. So one is called La Maison en Petit Cube. So the house of many little cubes. And it's a short film. It's quite sentimental. All it's quite sentimental. But really sweet and has a really concrete theme, which I find very helpful. And the other one is called More. And it also has a quite concrete theme. And both of them use story and metaphor to communicate their themes. And then there is one of my favorite children's books, Where the Wild Things Are. And it also has a theme and communicates this somewhat metaphorically and is worth exploring more. I had some really amazing game projects from one of the previous Deep Games courses I taught at DePaul that were based on Where the Wild Things Are. And looked nothing like the book. None of this looked like the original in game form, but the theme, if well done, was clearly there and tangible. So it's a really fascinating exercise. So have a look at all of these and then pick the one that you want to explore more deeply. Try to state the theme in a few words or a sentence, and then use the Inner Game Designer to understand the theme better. I would urge you, and you also need to include this for the assignment, write down this conversation with the Inner Game Designer. So don't just have it in your head, write down the dialogue, because the process of writing gives you time to think of the next things. There is something about the actual physical writing of it. Again, I recommend longhand, but I'm biased. If you have to type it, that's fine too, if you really hate writing longhand. But it gives you time to process and really, explore more deeply. And bring your thoughts and your conversations to our next session, and find 2 or 3 people from class that you could work with on this concept together, because this is supposed to be a teamwork. And then in class, we will compare notes on your conversations, and also, of course, answer any questions or discuss any things that came up for you listening to this lecture. So concretely, this means until the next session, you just come with your notes and your questions and thoughts from the materials covered today and the readings you did for today. But then for September 7th, you create a 1.5 to 2-page write-up that will include a 1-page report of the essence of your conversation with the Inner Game Designer. And so you might distill that when you do a group work. So you do it individually first, and then you do it with your group, and you distill what the most important parts of that conversation are. And a 1/2 page to a page description of the game concept that follows from that. Everything that I'm saying, if this is confusing, I wrote this down in the assignment description, so it should be much clearer. If you still have questions, let me know, but it should be much clearer what you're supposed to do. And then you submit 1 concept document per team to Student Portalen, to the submission folder, Human Experience Game Concept. And then you will get feedback from me, and you will start prototyping, and then we go from there. Okay. Thank you.